Okay, so this panel is presented by the Capital District region of the Special Education Task Force. The task force is a collaboration between parents, schools, advocates, attorneys, service providers, government representatives. We try to focus on improving educational outcomes by promoting collaboration and providing trainings like the one we're doing here today. My name is Kristen Smith. I'm one of the co-chairs for the Capital District Task Force. I'm also a staff attorney at the Legal Aid Society and the Children's Law Project. I represent parents and children on various types of educational issues. My other co-chair, Sherry Rosado, is also here with us today. And she works with the Chalmette School District. We have Tina Beauparlant, who's an advocate with Parent to Parent. Helen is here with us helping to facilitate today's training with Disability Rights also. I believe I also saw that Ruth Ann Fennelly is with us. She's an advocate with Vanderheiden, who's also a member of our task force board. If you need to reach out to anyone regarding today's training or generally what the task force does, please feel free to reach out to any one of us. You can also consult with our website, which I will put a link to in the chat box so that anyone who wants it has that. As we said, today's presentation is being recorded, and we're hoping that it will be posted on our direct web page for access later on. We're going to have 3 presenters today. Each of them is going to get some time to present directly about their district, and then we're going to loop back and address any questions that you all may have. Because there are so many people on the presentation today, we're asking that you use the chat box feature to ask your questions rather than unmuting yourself and asking them verbally. And Tina, Helen, and I will all be monitoring the chat box to direct your questions back to our presenters. The information that's being provided today by our districts are ideas about what you might see at different districts with different demographic information, different resources, different student needs. And it's not necessarily guarantees or promises of what you're going to actually end up seeing when districts reopening. So today's presenters, we have Casey Bardin. He's with the North Colonie School District. We have Erin Hill with Cohoes and Jessica Spellberg with South Glens Falls. We're going to start with Casey, and I'm going to turn things over to you now, Casey, and I'm going to mute myself.
Okay, great. Can everyone hear me? Okay. Okay, great. So first, I'd just like to say, thank you for inviting me and thank you for having me today. Again, I'm Casey Bardin, Director of Pupil Services in the North Colonie Central School District. I want to first preface this with starting off and saying that unfortunately, luckily they allowed me to go first today, but unfortunately I have to step out of this call, after my presentation. I'm certainly willing to address questions and so on as we go, or, if folks want to get those questions to me after, I'm happy to answer any follow-up questions. But if you have seen the news this week, North Colonie we had one positive COVID case in our ESY program. I'm happy to report that all of those direct contacts who had expedited testing through the Department of Health came back negative. So they actually did deem our ESY program safe for students.
Good, I will.
Sorry, safe for students to return. However, the next day, the following day, we had a fire at Shaker High School. So it's been a busy week for us, and I actually have to run over to the high school after to look at appropriate classrooms and so on. So I just want to preface by saying that. But I think if I mention this because I think it's important to let everyone know what that experience kind of looked like to start with. I know we want to really get to, what the reopening of schools might look like for the fall, but I think this is important to mention quickly because, it's a new process for all of us. And, I want to really give a lot of credit to the Department of Health and the partnership that what we had with them here in Albany County. As soon as we got notification that there was a positive test with one of our faculty members in the program, they worked with us in a really expedited and efficient way to make sure that we got direct contacts tested as soon as possible through the UAlbany location. And frankly, in some cases, test results were turned around in a matter of 4 to 5 hours, which was just incredible for us to be able to communicate with families. Well, we really do but communicate with families as to next steps and so on. So I say that because I think whatever the return looks like in the fall for us, all the districts are going to have to face the various challenges that come with, say, a positive test, and what that looks like in real time and what that means for our students and our families. So I just felt like it was important to mention that it was a really it's not something that we want to have to deal with, and we certainly understand the challenges with that. But I have to say, the results coming back negative, and our partnership with Department of Health was really, really positive. So I felt like that was important to mention to start here. But now I'll go into the heart of what I really wanted to pass along, and and talk a little bit about our planning for the reopening. And I can also say we used a lot of our ideas for reopening based on what our approach was to extended summer school. We decided to bring all of our students in, all the students that were recommended for extended school year programming. We decided to offer programming for them and bring them in and really make sure that we had all of the protocols in place to make sure it was as safe as possible. So, we're really trying to use some of those protocols that we already have in place. And more specifically, I think the pieces that are very important to reflect on are really, we weren't really sure what that was going to look like for our students and our staff members that were coming in with, they have to do an attestation every single day before they come in to our building, staff and students. And really what that is just answering the questions about any sort of, if they have any symptoms, if they've traveled out of state to any of the states that are identified as New York as a hot button state, and that they need to report that. So we have that attestation that's really mimics an app on your phone that you would go through and have to answer all those questions. And everyone has to do that prior to entering the building. We also take temperatures of every single student that comes in the building and every single faculty member. So all of our ESY faculty and staff and all of our students that come in to our ESY program they all take their temperature. Students prior to getting on the bus, they take their temperature there, and then students who are dropped off by parents, we have a station out in front of the school where they take their temperature every day prior to coming into the building. And frankly, any custodial staff, if the principal wants to come in the building, they have to do the attestation and take their temperature if they want to come in the building. So those are some protocols that we have put in place. Now, I will say that when thinking about the reopening in the fall, though some of these protocols are much easier to have in place with a smaller scale. On a smaller scale, because we have about 140 students that are coming in, and there's 6,000 in our district. So, in the fall, we're planning on keeping a lot of the protocols in a very similar fashion. What will become more challenging is to require any sort of temperature checks for all the students it being done in person. So we're really looking to require all of the temperature checks, have them done at home prior to coming in. And so families will, have a responsibility for that. We will keep an attestation, app in place. We're currently exploring a couple different applications to make that a little bit more seamless to make sure that we have the bandwidth to make that work for our 6,000 students potentially in our district. So we're working on making sure that's solidified. But a lot of the things that we already have in our extended school year program will remain in place. Signage has been really important. Signage in the hallways, signage in the classrooms, understanding what a 6 foot social distance looks like. What does that look like in your classroom? So a lot of our lessons initially will really be working on explaining to students, what social distancing means in their classroom and what that means for any sort of transitions that might take place, throughout the day and so on. So, things, PPE that we've made available for everyone and we'll continue to make available for our students in the fall are, masks. We're requiring masks for all of our teachers and our students. Now, as we know, there are some students that are unable to wear masks because of, a medical concern or behavioral challenges or sensory issues. So we've tried to make accommodations for those students. And, in those instances, we make sure that we, make sure that we stay, fixed on the 6 foot social distancing protocols and so on in those scenarios. All of our related service folks take extra precautions if they're in closer proximity to some of our students, meaning that we have our related service folks wearing masks as well as shields for extra protection, gloves, and in some cases gowns as well. So that has seemed to serve us quite well. And I'm very, very proud of our staff and enduring the challenges that come with wearing a mask for an entire day. And frankly, our students have adjusted really, really well to keeping masks on throughout the day and also maintaining social distancing. So, I think we've also done a pretty good job, and we'll keep this in place of giving students mask breaks where appropriate throughout the day, and really trying to identify times where we can give them those breaks, to help support their endurance with wearing masks and so on throughout the day. So those are some important pieces I think to reflect on, and that will also be in place throughout the school year as well.
Before you move on, we have a couple of questions that are regarding the temperature checks and the masks. Sure. So before you get too far further, I want to try to address those. So one of the questions was whether schools can get bulk pricing for no-touch digital thermometers to then make available for parents to purchase. And the next question is, how do you protect other children that sit around a child who can't wear a mask? Like, do they get additional protections around their desk?
Yeah, two good questions. So the first question, I will say this, that, we are trying to, identify families that might not be able to have the non-touch temperature taking devices. We're thinking about options for that. So yes, we've already placed bulk orders in our district for the fall, and we're frankly, we're still looking at several different options. There are a few different quick reading devices that we are looking at purchasing. We haven't made a final decision on that, but I guess to answer the question as clearly as possible, yes, we're looking at trying to bulk order several of those temperature taking devices so that we are prepared for the fall, and also providing families that don't have those opportunities. We will help to provide those for families. So that's what we're currently looking to do. I'm sorry. Question 2 was about the 6 foot social distancing, correct? So with that, and we do have those examples already in our ESY program, our summer school program. And what we have done with that is we've really tried to focus our staffing support in that area. If we have a concern where one student may not be wearing a mask and we're worried about another student understanding or maintaining the 6 foot social distancing, we will utilize either furniture in the classroom to kind of help with that 6 foot barrier, and then also staffing and making sure that we prioritize staffing to help support and make sure that we maintain that 6 foot social distancing. So frankly, is it challenging in some cases? The answer is yes. And I think, it's really what I've found is that it's a reflection with the team. So we kind of say, okay, what are the challenges that we're facing if it continues to be a challenge of not maintaining the 6 foot distance, then what can we do? What other strategies can we put in place? What other, how can we manipulate the environment to think differently about that? And it's a continuation of kind of a teaming approach to make sure that we're staying safe. Does that help? I hope. So, excuse me. So what I'd like to go into next is really, our planning and how we thought about the reopening for the fall. And frankly, we made our decision based on what we all know, that the distance learning for our students when we ended up being out in the spring presented many challenges for our student population, our special education students. So with the governor's order, it presents pretty clearly to me that we should prioritize special education students being back in person on a daily basis. And frankly, as a school district, we didn't need a governor's order to tell us that. We kind of made that decision right away, and we said, look, this should be a priority for our district and for our families and for our kids. So we really made that decision right away that we're going to work to the best of our ability to make sure that we get our special education students K-12 in on a daily basis. So with that in mind, then it's easy to say that, and then becomes the challenge of, how are we going to do that with, the social distancing protocols, the limit on transportation and the number of students that we can bring in at a specific time. What does that mean for our space? What does that mean for staffing? And that becomes the next step, which we've been working through that process, and it really looks different at every level. So what we have to do is, in every district looks different, and every district's space looks different. So for us, we're really planning on bringing our K through 3rd grade students in our elementary buildings. And really, traditionally, our elementary buildings have been K through 6. So we're bringing K through 3 in our elementary buildings to provide for that social distancing, and really, to simplify the math problem here is really, splitting our classes in half. And so what we'll be doing is based on the services, whether it's, self-contained classrooms, then we will prioritize bringing in all of our self-contained classrooms, and then also we try to cluster our students in an organized way for any students receiving consultant teacher or co-teaching model. So that was really the work with our elementary level principals, is saying, okay, here are all the needs of our special education students. How can we work together with our special education staff and our general ed teachers to make sure that we can maximize students being in and maximize the flexibility in the schedule. For example, if we have a teacher that needs to pull some students for a resource room at 8:30, then how can we offset that ELA block, whether it be a first grade ELA block, and then we have our resource room time opposite of that. It's really working with the school principals to support the schedule, but also make sure that our special education students are prioritized in that schedule as well. So that's what the K through 3 schedule will look like for us, and we will be bringing all self-contained resource room consultant teacher students in on a daily basis. That is our plan. 4 through 6, we had to, again, for space reasons, our 4 through 6 students will be relocated to our junior high building, and that's where we will have to kind of share our staff a little bit from a special education standpoint. But we really took the same approach there, as really working with the building principal that will oversee our 4 through 6 students, and then thinking about looking at through the lens of our IEPs and what our students' needs are. Then, okay, how can we work together to build a schedule that works for our students. So that's, why don't I stop there for any elementary or any questions that I have so far? Is that okay?
Sure. We do have some questions that have been posted in the chat box.
Sure.
So I'm going to read them in order that they came in.
Okay.
For students with, say, sensory behavioral issues who cannot wear a mask, if that student also requires a one-to-one aid or hand-over-hand assistance, how do you accommodate those students meeting all of the factors? And how do you plan to manage students who don't understand being 6 feet apart?
Yeah, that's a little bit of, so a couple of things with students with behaviors, that, excuse me, that does become challenging. So what we've done is we've looked at that from almost the standpoint similar to our therapists. We've tried to, put protocols in place that, keep both the student and the staff member as safe as possible with the PPE protocols, meaning that they will be wearing gloves at all times. They will wear both shield and mask. And then if there is a time, frankly, where there has to be direct contact, then there does come a time where safety, it goes back to keeping the student and the staff member safe. So we've really tried to just give them as many protections with the PPE as we can. And then again, if it continues to be a challenge, then we kind of reflect as a team, meaning all of us with the building principal, myself, the family, the teacher, and the educational aide within that classroom to really talk through, okay, we're seeing an uptick in the amount that we need to be in close proximity. So how can we look at this a little bit differently? We, crazily, this is our time, but even thinking about using, we've used pool noodles to demonstrate that distance for students and really helping them to visualize, what that means, and trying to use other manipulatives to help students understand, what that distance should be and should remain throughout the day. So, it's a work in progress. And I think the way we've gotten better at it is really to reflect early and often if we find that it's going to be a continuous challenge. I hope that helps.
Sure. And the next question is related. So I don't know if you have anything to add on that. It says, how are districts preparing for behavior issues related to masks and social distancing when it relates to their disability? So how do you build in educating students about social distancing without turning it punitive when the student's impulsivity leads to the social distancing issue?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I have to say, we have several behavioral programs right now in our ESY program, and it really has not presented a big challenge. However, we need to prepare because it could. So really what we've done is gone back to, I like to go back to the behavior plan because I think that's important. So what do we need to change within the behavior plan to make sure that we're identifying what needs to change and how we need to approach it, slightly differently, whether it be, building in more mass breaks throughout the day, or let's think about what else we can put in place that is safe, so that we can kind of identify those different breaks throughout the day. Now there are going to be times where, maybe there's just a crisis, and in that from that lens, we really have to, look at it through the lens of just keeping everyone safe during that time. But for us, it's been going back to the behavior plan and thinking about, what are some things that we can look at differently, because, the requirements are different. So I think it's important to go back to the behavior plan and really talk through that to your team, because if the student is in other settings, then folks have to know what's changing in the plan. That's why I think it's most important to go through that process of really updating the behavior plan in that sense.
Okay. We do have some other questions and comments, but I know you just have a few minutes. So if you want to, if you have anything additional or kind of some final, remarks or points you want to make about your district, go ahead. And then at the end, we should have time to come back to those questions and comments.
Sure. So I just want to, I know I've explained kind of K through 6, and I just want to quickly go over our 9 through 12, our 7 through 12 approach, because that presented the larger challenge. Because with the space challenge that we have 7 through 12, the model that we've decided on as a district as of today. So, I want to preface this with, everything is evolving and changing, but our students will come in every other day in 7 through 12. So that presents a challenge for special education, because we as a team and as a district have already said, well, we're going to prioritize special education students coming in daily. So what we have to do 7 through 12 is build a schedule within a schedule to make sure on those opposite days where if a student's coming in for periods 1 through 4, okay, well, how do we look at making sure that we get students in if they have resource room, for example, 5, 6, 7, 8, and that's not one of the scheduled classes that day, how do we build a schedule within a schedule? So that's what we're currently in the process of doing. 4 through 6, was a little bit easier because, that was from the beginning, we were prioritizing bringing students in every single day. So 7 through 12, this presents a little bit more of a challenge, but we're working through that, and we will still prioritize bringing 7 through 12 special education in every single day. And I also want to just mention, I guess in closing, that, another really critical and important focus for us is the mental health of our students and the mental health of all of our students. So, we've put some pieces in place that are, starting points. And we have mental health team K through 12. that has representation from, our social workers, principals, psychologists, teacher representation. And then we also have built-in mental health teams in specific buildings that will meet on a weekly basis to really make sure that we're identifying any student, not just special education students, but any student that needs a plan, meaning, they're going through a challenging time, or we need to put different plans and resources in place. I think it's one more thing that I wanted to mention, because I think that's going to be really, really important for all districts in the fall to come up with a mental health plan, which I know is required, but at the same time, what's going to be most effective for our students. And I think a lot of it, frankly, is helping to train our teachers in knowing what resources are available, and knowing when the social worker can be of support and when the school psychologist can be of support, and helping teachers know what resources they have at their fingertips, and also help with building in some kind of classroom and tier 1 level supports for our teachers as well. So that's another portion of our plan that I think is really important to think about in this reopening, because we all know how that hit our families and students in March when we had to close. And thank you. That's all I had. There's a lot more to share, but that's all I have for now. So thanks very much, and I will certainly try to answer any questions.
Thank you, Casey. You are jumping off and then going to be joining, correct?
That is my goal. So I will do my best. I have to jump off and identify some classrooms at the high school after the fire. So I will try to make it back on as soon as I can. Excellent. Thank you so much. And I'm happy to, if you all are okay with it, I'm happy to share, my email if folks want to email me separately, and we can talk through specific ideas or plans or whatever. I'm happy to do that. That's fine. That's wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. All right. So we're going to pass the microphone next. Erin, do you want to take the mic for a few minutes?
Wow, that was quick. Hi, my name is Erin Hill, and I'm the Special Programs Director from the Cohoes City School District, which is much smaller than the North Colonie Central School District. We have about 2,000 students in Cohoes. We have 3 elementary schools, a middle school, and a high school. And we are classified by New York State as a small city school, also as a high needs to low resources state aid ratio school, which means that we have a lot of struggles as far as our finances in Cohoes. So I want to just take us all back in time before we talk about the reopening. I want to talk about the closing, because we in Cohoes have learned a lot of valuable lessons, I think, after the closing, and that is really informing how our reopening plan is going to go. When all of a sudden school shut down because of the virus in March, there was no warning, there was no lead time, and it's not something that had ever happened in the educational lifetime of any of us who were working with students. We weren't sure what to do. We didn't have any kind of a framework. We didn't have any kind of established system. We didn't know what families had internet connections, what families had computers that their kids could do work on, what families had tablets that could work like a computer, because other tablets can't work like a computer, and the families that didn't know, would they be able to do their schoolwork on it or not? We didn't know either. We had teachers with various levels of internet experience with different kinds of platforms, and people have been experimenting with different things in their classrooms. We had when we were still in school, there were some teachers using Schoology and some teachers using Class Dojo and some kids using Google and some teachers using Seesaw. And so we had this kind of mishmash of some people know some things, but everybody's experience is a little different. What we have been really focused on for this reopening is how can we get this together? Even though, I mean, if you know me, I tend to be pretty optimistic and looking for the bright side of things, but my central theme of planning for this reopening is we have to front load for when we have to close again, because it seems so likely that eventually there will be closure, whether it's because we have an outbreak in our district or whether it's because things get bad statewide and we have to stop things. However that works, our main focus based on what happened in March is to make sure that what happened in March does not happen again. So a lot of our closing has focused on, or a lot of our reopening planning, has focused on surveying our parents, what technology do you have? Surveying our community, the internet, various internet providers, the public housing communities, for example, now are going to have unlimited Wi-Fi available for families to work on school-related things. You know, if they're using the Wi-Fi for their schoolwork, they have Wi-Fi access in their apartments now, which will be a game changer for a lot of families. We will also, we're working with Spectrum to try to get a community-wide deal. We have secured a donation of large Wi-Fi hotspots that we're going to install on the outside of each of our school buildings. So worst case scenario, families could come and hang out in the parking lot where there's lots of open space and bring their device and do some work there when their children are not in school or after school. So we're really trying to make that happen. We've also streamlined the platforms that we use at the elementary and the secondary levels so that parents are not going to need to figure out how to work with 3 or 4 different ways to access their child's education. And our biggest thing for the start of school for students when they get here is going to be to teach them how they can access their things for when they are at home. So they're going to be able to feel connected. We're going to do a lot of community building activities when they get into school at first. Our whole focus, not our whole focus, but a big focus is to make sure that they feel engaged, that they feel connected, so that in the event that we do have to go virtual again, they will feel some motivation and some comfort with being able to still connect with their class and their teacher virtually. You'll be able to ask the teacher questions online, be able to sign in for a Google Meet on their Google Classroom. We also have recorded step-by-step videos that we're going to have available in a parent library so that parents can access those videos and see how they need to log on or what steps they can take to log on and kind of troubleshoot their process. So, and I feel it feels so backwards to me, but we are reopening with reclosing in mind. And I feel like we have to do that because our closing the first time was so awful that we just want to be sure that our people stay connected with us. As far as our plans for students coming back to school, we're bringing everyone back in kindergarten through 5th grade at our elementary schools every day. Students will stay in pods in their classrooms. We have converted some AIS teachers, people who provided remedial reading, remedial math, who are elementary certified, will be classroom teachers so that we can spread out classrooms and have more students, have more classes, so there's more space for the students. Related services will be provided in small groups with kids pulled out only from the pod that they're in. So we won't be mixing groups. We're trying to keep them, keep as much cohort integrity as we can so that students aren't mixing all around with other students. They will be wearing masks like they will in North Colonie, but they also will be having mask breaks. And our functional skills students, of which we have 4 classes at the elementary level, as well as 1 class at the middle school and 1 class at the high school, will all be in, every day in their same cohort, and they actually are in for extended school year this summer too, and that is going well so far. They ride in a little cohort bus, so they have their own bus for each class. So again, they're not crossing over with different students. Oh, I can respond to that question I just saw about start dates. Can I do that or no? No? Okay, Tina, I won't do that. Sorry, it was like a shiny thing and it distracted me. Okay, for our middle school and high school students, they are going to be every other day in class, with the exception of our functional skills classes at the middle and high school. The plan is for each grade to be kind of broken in half. So half of them come on blue day, half of them come on gold day, because those are our school colors. So you're either blue team or gold team. And we'll say, for example, blue day starts. So blue day comes in person the first day, and they do the first part of their lesson, which is the in-person part. And then the teacher has planned extension or enrichment or remediation activities for them to do at home virtually on the second day. And our consultant teachers and our special class teachers will work to make sure that things are at the appropriate level for our students to be able to work on virtually on the skills that they need. So then on day 2, the blue team has their virtual day, and the gold team gets the same lesson that the blue team had on day 1. So they're just on a staggered schedule coming in every other day. That will work for our high school students when they go to CTE, because we have a number of students in general and special education primarily that do go for the VOTEC programs, and CTE will be offering those programs as well. That's the plan at Capital Region BOCES and at the Mohanneson Center as well. I feel like so much of what I have to say is a lot like what Casey had to say. So I'm not certain what other information I should get right now.
No, you're doing fabulous. So are you okay with taking some questions at this point?
I would love to take some questions.
Okay. So there's a lot of different questions here. So the first one I'm going to ask you is, a lot of schools have already opened and they're having difficulty with kids wearing their masks in the hallways. What steps do you guys have in place at this point in time for that?
I'm going to go with for when we start in the fall.
When you start, for the kids wearing their masks in the hallways.
Right, because our kids do that now at ESY, but they're such small self-contained groups that it's not a problem. They walk with their teachers. But particularly when we get to middle and high school, I would think is where people would foresee the difficulties. And I know that because there are going to be half as many kids there, and because they're going to kind of stagger the release times for students, so there will be less of them in the hall, it seems more likely that they will keep their masks on. We're also going to have that mask wearing, that hygiene, hand washing, all be a big focus as far as what teachers talk with students about in every classroom.
Okay. And then there's another one. If we get a spike after school starts, which nobody knows, could teachers spend some time, which I think you kind of answered this a little bit, with some of the kids to teach them how to use the technology for if school closes again? And somebody's got something playing in the background somewhere.
I'm trying to mute it right now.
Okay. So, and I, like I said, Erin, I think you kind of answered that a little bit, but
Yeah,
we'll
we're going
spend
to,
some time.
yes, we're planning to start the year with teachers doing lessons in the classroom with students where they're using Chromebooks, they're accessing what they need to access, they're making sure they can log on to everything, so that in the event that there is a spike or we have a class that has to not come in for 2 weeks because a student or two students, end up testing positive, then they will still be able to access from home.
Okay. Okay. We'll kind of hold off on the next question at the end, I think. So, if there's anything else that you want to add, Erin, at this point.
No, I feel like I mostly follow along with what Casey had said, other than our middle school students and high school students will be every other day. And I did want to talk about how we want to spend the beginning, making sure that our students feel capable of accessing virtually and attached enough to want to do that.
Perfect. Thank you. I also want to let everybody know that Casey, Jessica, and Erin have all given us handouts. You will be receiving them later on. Helen will make sure that you get them. So we do have handouts from each one of these districts. And I know you're all from all over. Some of you are from all different parts of New York State. So please keep in mind that one district plan is not going to look like the next district plan, because they're all going to look very different, but at least there might be some similarities. So Jessica, we're going to turn it over to you. Are you ready?
Hi, I'm ready. Well, first of all,
I'm going to mute everyone, and then
I'm going to hear you.
I'm going to mute everyone quickly, and then unmute Jessica.
Okay.
are we all set?
Yes.
Tina, you're muted. I see you're talking, but you're muted.
Am I all set to go?
Yes, you're all set, Jessica. Go ahead.
Great, thanks. So I am Jessica Spellberg. I am the Director of Special Education in the South Glens Falls Central School District. I'll give you a little information on our district. We are at the northernmost tip of Saratoga County. We border the counties of Warren County and Washington County. Our district has approximately 3,000 total students. Approximately 400 of those are special ed students. We also have preschool students that we service as well. We have about 75 of those. So our district is broken up into our elementary schools, which are K-5, and their neighborhood schools. We have middle school, which is 6-8, and then our high school. We also have the full continuum of services within our district for our students. When it comes to the reopening plans and the preparation that we went through as a district, the first thing we did was we decided we did not go face-to-face for our ESY programs. We felt we just did not have enough time to get the required PPE and make the necessary arrangements to keep everybody safe during that time. So we remained in a virtual format for ESY. We did bring in face-to-face testing to try to get through some of the backlogs of the reevaluations and some of the initials that we had prior to the closure. So that has gone well, and we had a protocol and procedure sign off for students and parents and staff as well. As a district, we started, I want to say, at the beginning of July with a district-wide committee on reopening plan. Within that committee, we had subgroups. I personally chaired the committee for reopening for special education. We had participants, we had about 12 participants in that subgroup. We had some gen ed teachers, related service providers, special education teachers in there to try to decipher some of the New York State guidance that was coming out, the rules, regulations, and the Department of Health guidelines for our students with disabilities. We met about 4 times throughout July. We also met as a full committee around 4 times in July to start putting together a plan. So in regard to special education in our district, what we decided to do is we are bringing back all of our self-contained classrooms 100% face-to-face. We have 15-1, 6-1-1, and 12-1 classrooms. They will be coming back. One of the big questions for a lot of my parents with those is the mask concern and students' ability to keep the mask on. We all know that there are students with sensory issues, medical issues, and even just developmentally can't understand the need to wear a mask. So in that event, we are looking at protecting the staff and the other students in those rooms as well, maintaining social distancing, whether we're using different dividers and furniture to help with that. Aides and staff in those programs will also get additional PPE of the masks, the face shields, they'll have gowns and gloves, especially if they're helping with any kind of toileting or hand-over-hand assistance with those students. I did see somebody talking about the mask breaks in some of the questions, so I can speak to that very quickly as well. When the students are socially distanced in a classroom and they're learning, we can allow them to take off their masks at their seats as long as they are socially distanced during an instruction time. So the scheduling of those mask breaks will really be dependent on the student's day and their specific calendar and what's happening during that day. They can also take them off when they're eating as well. Staff, on the other hand, must have their masks on at all times. I've also had parents ask me about face shields instead of masks. The Department of Health says that is not appropriate, so all students must wear masks. That doesn't mean that a child in our district can't come with a face shield as well. That would be fine, but we cannot replace the face shield for the face mask. So our like I said, our self-contained K-12 is coming back full time. At the elementary level, we are looking at a hybrid model. Within that hybrid model, we are looking to try to offer our related services face-to-face as much as possible. Of course, we want to try to balance that time, that instructional time, with being pulled out for related services. So on a case-to-case basis, we'll be working with parents to see if related services also need to be in a hybrid format. Our consultant teacher and integrated co-teaching services will remain face-to-face, K-12. At the secondary level, we're looking at block scheduling. So we made sure that any of our consultant teacher, co-teaching, and even resource room students would be able to meet their mandatory IEP minutes within that block schedule within a week. So that can happen face-to-face. We are also offering a virtual school for our entire district. So for any parent or family that feels that they are not ready to send their child back to school, they can register for what we're calling our virtual school. In that virtual school, we are in the process of creating a parent handbook to explain exactly what the requirements are. We are required to take attendance in virtual school. Yes, we will have to follow the IEP to the best of our abilities. We do still, in the virtual model, have some leeway with the provision of services, how we can provide services, whether it's group or individual, based on the format that we have. Just kind of lost my train of thought there. Related services. Oh, and the virtual school. So right now we're still in the planning part of how we're going to service that virtual school for special needs students. We're waiting to look at the registration of it. Right, looking today, I might have a 15-to-1 person in a 15-to-1 program at the elementary, but 3 at a middle school, and how do we staff that? So we are definitely taking that into account in how we staff that virtual piece to make sure we are accommodating all of the students' IEPs. In regard to in person, we are following all of the PPE from guidelines from the Department of Health. We are also taking into consideration bringing back more students in the event that our enrollment in the virtual school is higher. And if that allows us to do that, we are bringing back, we're looking at elementary, but we're also keeping the special ed population in consideration during that time. I think that's about it. I know there's going to be tons of questions that people have, so that's just the bare bones of special education in our district. There's a whole lot more going on in regard to the general ed population as well, but I know this is more focused on the special ed side of things. So I have open to questions.
There is a question, and Casey isn't here, so I'm just going to kind of ask it, and maybe you guys have had some conversations. Somebody wants to know, have there been discussions with state ed about keeping private or BOCES special school programs open because there's a smaller student population than bigger schools? I don't know if you both want to address that as well.
We are different, but actually different BOCES, so it might be better if we both address it. I am, Warren Washington County BOCES. I do know that our local BOCES, or Wish We BOCES, is creating their plan right now. Our district actually does house BOCES Bears program in one of our elementary schools. So we are currently having conversations with them and the percentage of time that they're looking at bringing their students back as well. And I think for them, it really comes down to spacing. And the ability to bring their kids in there and have that social distancing and what that might look like for that population. So we are having those conversations. The ones that aren't in district, that are housed in the Meyer Center or SAAC, I believe they are looking at bringing those BOCES students in full time.
Okay. And Erin, I don't know if Helen needs to unmute your mic or if you can do that. So Helen, can you unmute Erin's mic?
Oh, I did it.
Okay.
I feel so powerful. So I know that both Questar BOCES and Capital Region BOCES, because Cohoes lives on the border between the two of them, so we have students that go to both programs. And I know that they are both working on a plan to come back full time for students in the fall. I feel like the question is about if everyone else has to close, will they get to stay open because they're smaller? And I have not heard any conversation about that. I feel like it's doubtful, but I don't know about that. I do know that some of the private schools do their own thing. I know this summer some of them decided to be open and some of them decided to be closed. But then opening was an option for everyone, so I'm not certain about if I think if the state said everyone had to close, then everyone would have to close. This is my guess.
Yeah.
And I think you kind of answered this a little bit, Jessica, and I think you addressed some of it as well, Erin. If parents choose to keep their special needs children at home and do remote education, will the IEP still be honored?
Yes. We had to get really creative in March when we all had to transition very quickly to the virtual format. In our district, we have been kind of forward thinking as well in what happens if we're shut down again. So all of our teachers, including our special education teachers and related service providers, have created what's called a pivot plan. So in the event that we have to pivot very quickly back to virtual learning, parents know exactly what those expectations are and what that would look like for the students. In regard to shutting down, that if the governor shuts us down, we're all virtual no matter what. It doesn't matter if we're, a public school or a BOCES. But the BOCES are considered their own entity, so they have their own reopening plans, which makes it hard for some of us in the district because we have kiddos going all different places that we have to manage those different outside placements and what their reopening plans are as well. So we are definitely keeping an eye on that. And at least for my parents, when we know more, we are trying to communicate as much as possible.
So Tina, just to add on to that, I feel like, yes, the district is always obligated to honor the IEP, but I think that we all need to keep in mind that at this time, honor the IEP. I think the quote from state ed is that we need to look at what the requirements of the IEP are through the lens of reasonableness at a particular time. And that doesn't mean that I, as the special programs director, can say, oh, it's not reasonable for your child to have any of these services right now. That's completely not what I want to do. It's not what any of us want to do. But I think it's important as parents for you to be able to come to your CSE person and say, I understand I'm opting for staying at home with my child and doing virtual learning, but I know that there are needs in this area, in this area, in this area that we can't meet in virtual learning on our own. So, work with me on how we can get something in place that's going to serve my child safely.
And it's those wonderful conversations that people need to have with their CSE chair people to discuss this, because if it happens again, I think what I hear both of you saying is we want the conversations to happen so that we're not all thrown out there and nobody knows what's what. So let's start to have those conversations now. So thank you. The next question that's kind of coming in, which I think everybody saw the governor talk today. So we know schools are opening, which is a definite. So now people want to know, what will the start dates be for the regions in the fall? What I understood the governor to say this morning or mid-afternoon is that every district can start their start date on a different time. It's up to the districts when they want to have schools start. So that's going to be very different for all of you. So I'm not sure what you two have to offer to them.
Tina, I feel like if you say depends on what the district wants, it sounds so like willy-nilly.
Well, every district is going to do something very different. We all know that. No district is going to be the same.
Right, and all their plans are going to be different. But I feel like it has to do with how much work have people done on their plans and how much are they thinking, oh, he's going to say people are going to party on Labor Day, so I'm going to sit it back 2 weeks and they won't get to start then anyway.
No.
I feel like people need to, like, districts want to be sure that they have a plan that's going to keep everybody safe. Mm-hmm. And it may well look different in different places. I know we're planning on starting the Thursday of the week that is going to be the first week of school in this region. So is it the 7th maybe?
So that's after Labor Day, I guess, right?
Yeah. Like after there's Labor Day, and then there are a few days, and our start date in the school calendar made last year was going to be Wednesday, but we're putting in another professional development day for teachers to be able to get all set with their technology and all on the same page on Wednesday, and we'll start Thursday.
Okay.
And our start date in South Glens Falls is remaining the same at this point. And I have to say that everything is subject to change depending on what comes out from state ed or different guidance that we have. But we are looking at starting on September 8th.
Jessica, I think this question is more to you because you had made a comment about building in breaks for children.
Yep.
So how do you plan on building in those kind of breaks for kids so that they don't have to have their mask on?
So I think about, when I talk about with special ed teachers, I think of those that have the visual schedules on the board for the kiddos. Maybe they have one meeting and then they have their math instruction. During their math instruction, if their seats are socially distanced and those students can be 6 feet apart, while they're sitting there listening to instruction, they may be allowed to take their masks off for a few minutes. So it really comes down to the scheduling of the day within that classroom. Guidance does say that if they're socially distanced during instructional time, they can have a mask break, but they have to be socially distant. So it's really going to come down to when within their day do they have the ability to keep them socially distant so that they can take those breaks. And that also applies to when they're eating snack or lunch or any of those. They can take their masks down, obviously, because they need to eat, but they also need to be socially distanced. And one of the things that I forgot to add that I just want to add too is for our speech students and our students who with hearing, We are looking as a district looking into buying the clear masks for our speech therapists and for some of those teachers. Yep. So I have had a lot of questions on that. So we are, and I know a lot of districts are also looking into purchasing those to help with students who are hard of hearing or who need articulation therapy and things like that, so they can see the movement of the mouth.
Tina, I see your mouth moving, but you are muted.
Yeah, that was going to be one of my questions. I just realized it about the clear masks for kids that need speech. So you just kind of answered that one for me. So then there's another question about if we're going to have staggering schedules, will the classes be released at different times? Will there be a different start time and end time to things, and the beginning and ending of school? Can't hear you, Erin.
Okay. Not that staggered. I'm just like a 30-second stagger. So they're kind of trickling out instead of rushing out at the door at the same time. Can I also answer the question that earlier that says that looking for clarification about my special ed and middle school students, and it is general ed and special ed students that are in consultant teacher classes and that are in 15-1 special classes for English or math will also be every other day, which means that they have extension or remediation activities on the virtual day in between. And the nice piece of it is that if they're a 15-1, then they have only 7 students in their class with the special ed teacher and the teaching assistant on the day that they are there. So they should be really able to get them prepped for the day that they're at home, is our hope and thought.
Some of the questions. There's one here that says, how are you modifying IEPs that involve prompts to preferential seating when the students are sitting 6 feet apart? So if a student needs, and it states on his or her IEP preferential seating, how are we going to kind of modify that? What would that look like? And before I say anything else, I'm also reading in the chats that people have their lines open. If you could please close them, because people are saying that they're having struggles hearing people. Thank you. We really appreciate it.
So Tina, do you want to call on one of us to respond so we're not?
I'm going to have Jessica respond to that right now.
Okay, could you repeat the question?
The question is, how would you modify a student who has preferential seating on his or her IEP based upon the guidance of 6 feet apart in the classroom?
Right. So first of all, I would look to see if there are any recommendations under that on the IEP. If it's the preferential seating is close to instruction, or I have some students who need to be seated close to an open door because they don't like the doors being closed, things like that. So we would definitely look at those. Things are very easy to do, even though people are socially distanced. You take that desk that's socially distanced, but put it closest to the instruction as possible. Unfortunately, it has to be 6 feet away, but they would be the closest one to the instruction or the closest one to the door. So any of the accommodations or modifications, at least in my district, that are impacted by the Department of Health regulations, we will be having, I encourage all the parents to reach out to me to have those conversations. There are things that we can do or add to the IEP to help support those kiddos if the Department of Health regulations are impacting them negatively.
Erin, do you want to open up your mic and answer to that in your district?
I think what Jessica said, and I think again with the guidance that we have from state ed, we don't necessarily need to change the IEP. If we need to, based on the circumstances around COVID, if we need to do things differently, I think the more information, the better. So if we want to make an amendment that says, in this case, we need to be sure that this is how it happens, then we could do that. But if we can have a simple conversation for something that's pretty clear, we don't necessarily need to make a change in the document.
And this question is specifically to you. They're looking for some clarification based upon the middle school and high school special ed students with every other day going to school. Can you clarify that?
I just did that one.
I apologize.
That's okay.
There's a lot of questions here.
I know. I was thinking, I think I just did that one.
Okay.
We did have we have 2 additional IEP related questions if we want to kind of stick on the topic of IEPs.
Yeah.
One asks, should goals be changed that provide for students who need to interact with a peer or work in small group, etc.?
So Jessica, or just let one of them know who you want to answer that, Kristen.
Yeah, sorry about that. I think my screen froze there for a second. Erin, why don't you take that one first? So again, should goals change that read for students to interact with a peer or work in small group, etc.?
I think it depends to be the answer to most of these questions, but it really is. I mean, if it's interacting with the peer, there are certainly ways that peer interactions and peer discussions can still take place. I mean, if you're in a counseling group, for example, with 3 students from your same pod and the school social worker, and you're sitting around a table that's bigger than the table you would usually sit around, you can still be having those interactions. If it has to do with more specifically building a project, hands-on project with someone, then clearly that's not going to work. But again, I think we need to have that discussion with the family and the providers and teachers at school. What's the essence of this goal? What are we looking for? And in this circumstance, how can we demonstrate that? Because we don't want to just throw out the goal, because clearly it's important enough that the student shows these skills somehow that it's in the IEP, but it's just a question of what can we do differently so that they can demonstrate that they're learning that skill, in my opinion.
Jessica, do you want to add to that or have a different perspective?
I think there's I'm muted. I got muted.
You're good now.
Okay. So I think there's also a difference between, something about working with peers or in a group in a goal versus in a peer or a group when it's a service. So when it's a service and they're supposed to be working with a peer or in a group, those things we have a little bit of flexibility during COVID to work on because of the Department of Health social distancing. When it comes to a goal, if that's a goal that cannot be progress monitored or you can't collect data on it appropriately because you need that peer, we would first look to see how can we provide that scenario and be socially distanced. And if not, then we would possibly talk and see if we could amend the goal in some way to make it more measurable to meet the need of what we're looking for.
Okay, thank you. The second IEP related question that is still pending says, if public schools close, but our private schools stay open, will direct services still be provided to the private schools? Go ahead, Jessica. I see you unmuted.
I personally don't have any private schools within my district that we service, so I would defer to Erin on this one.
We don't have any either. Sorry. My guess would be that if a school district closes, so none of their teachers are providing in-person services, that probably the services would be provided virtually, just the way districts are providing virtual services to their own students that attend there.
Thank you. I have done a decent amount of reading on the, various guidance documents from state ed, and I've not actually come across anything that specifically addressed that. I think, though, my gut says that the way most of the districts, at least that I interact regularly with, would be doing probably exactly what you just said by trying to provide the service virtually rather than in person at that point. But that is something that we can kind of keep on our radar. And if I come across any information that clarifies that, I'm happy to kind of share it and put it out there. Okay. I'm just looking now. We do have, Erin, a question that's specific to Cohoes. I don't know if you will know the answer or not. It's regarding your universal pre-K program. And what do you know what the plan for those students are?
At this time, our universal pre-K plan is up in the air, pending state funding, which we have not yet received, although we are supposed to. I hope I was allowed to say that, but I mean, kids are supposed to be coming soon, so I would think that we could say that. I know that our UPKs are in discussion with our assistant superintendent for instruction about how that would look. I would assume they would try to be in person, but I can't promise that, like all in person, but I can't promise that that's true. I'm really not certain. I know that we are working on, in our department, we're working on how would we do CPSC evaluations with our UPK students if that was something that became needed.
I have a question that is not typed in and I haven't seen it at all. So I'm curious, what is going to be the protocol for parents or any outside people coming into the building, or will they not be allowed to come in and just our children? And I'll go to Jessica first.
So protocol, we are trying to keep as many people out, I want to say, as possible to try to maintain those cohorts. All of our courses are contact culture, so by keeping the kiddos in the cohorts, we can better make sure if somebody tests positive, we can track that and let people know and be in contact with the Department of Health. So we are even limiting parents into the building unless it's absolutely necessary. I have already had some conversations with parents that want some of the behavioral specialists to come in to observe, and we are just trying to think outside of the box for those things, get kids started, get them acclimated into their program. Is it something where we can send in like a video clip or just other alternative methods to be able to allow those providers to come in so we're not bringing extra adults into the building. So it's really going to be a case-by-case situation and a conversation with the parent and whatever provider they're asking to come in. But we will have district protocol for parents and for any other person wanting to enter the building on who can, when they can, and what the protocols and health screenings would be if they do.
Thank you very much. Erin, is yours similar?
Yes, we are limiting people who come into the building. I mean, when people are delivering things that we've ordered, they have to sign in, they have to sign the attestation that says they haven't been out of the country and they don't have a fever and they haven't been in any of the naughty states and they haven't been in contact with anyone with COVID. We also, it has right in our safety plan that all of our parent meetings, including CSE meetings, including parent conferences, will be virtual.
I didn't do that. Somebody just unmuted my mic. I don't know what just happened. That scared me. So that's fabulous, because that was going to be my next question for both of you. Since we're trying to limit the amount of people in the building, I would assume that CSE meetings are going to be virtual and things like that. So Erin, since you just answered, I'll let you answer, and then I'll just go to Jessica again.
Yes, our parent meetings are going to be virtual, and our parents kind of are getting used to them, I think, because we've done phone conferences, and now we've started doing we took baby steps, and we started with just phone conferences, and then we did the video conferences for people who would participate, and that's the plan, is for us to continue that way for the foreseeable future.
That's our plan as well, is to continue virtually. And I, have to say that I've actually had more parent participation in CSE meetings since we've been virtual, because they don't have to worry about transportation, getting into the building, or any of the discomfort some parents may feel coming in. So I'm having a much better success with some of those parents that are reluctant to come to meetings. So I think whether or not we have COVID or not, as a district, we're looking at keeping that an option moving forward for good.
Thank you. And I think it's Helen behind the scenes hitting my button. So thank you, Helen. You're fabulous. There's a question here about Schenectady City School District, which unfortunately we did have, and I do want to address that. Jessica Karn Allen was going to be one of our presenters from Schenectady. Unfortunately, there was a conflict and she had to pull out, and we did try to locate another presenter. So I will be honest, but this question, I don't think we can answer, but maybe I think we kind of did as to the protocol going in. They're probably going to do the same type of protocol. And then there's a question here. It says, if a parent got sick, if a parent got sick, child will go back to school, got sick. What will make the parent? Yes.
I think it's if a parent has got a sick child,
can't
be able to go in and get them.
Yeah.
And I'm not certain how that would work. I mean, the parent would definitely come to school to get the child. I don't know. I mean, we have a vestibule, and between, there's like that little meeting space between the outside and coming all the way into school. I would think that the parent would wait in the vestibule, and the nurse or the aide from the nurse's office would bring the child out and deliver the child to the parent. That's how it would work for us. I'm not sure if other buildings would be more flexible.
So we have a containment plan if a parent or student gets sick, and we'll have an isolation room for those children to wait until parents can be there to pick them up. And they would most likely have an adult walk back.
I'm not sure if we just lost Jessica. It was kind of choppy. I don't know if everybody else heard that. I couldn't even hear what she said.
Can you hear me? Do you want me to repeat it?
Yeah,
Can you hear me now?
Yes, if you don't mind.
Okay. I said if we have a student who presents as being sick in the building, we have a containment plan in our building. So we would have a room that's deemed for isolation for those students until they could be picked up. Once the parent arrived, then most likely an adult would walk that parent with their PPE, would walk that child out to the parent.
Okay, that's perfect. Kristen, do you see anything else that we can address? Because we've got like 5 minutes left.
I'll take a look really quick. I was actually just sending in the chat box.
I just want to let people know to please check your district websites. They are starting to post stuff onto the websites with plans. And according to what I heard the governor say today, and I was trying to write like really fast here, but there's like 100 and some odd school districts that don't have all their plans done yet. I think there's 70 something that they have questions about. So I would suggest you check your district website, and hopefully most of them will have information on their front page so that you're not digging around trying to find that information. But I strongly suggest that you do that. And if you have questions, there should be a way for you to reach out to somebody to ask questions too. Erin and Jessica, am I correct in saying that?
No, yeah, definitely. And what I wanted to say is the governor said that there are 3 things that districts have to do by August 21st. One is to, on their website, separately from the whole plan, just put the specifics of the plan, the testing plan for COVID, and the contact tracing process the district will use. The second thing he said was that the district has to have at least 3 public discussions about the plan with parents. So parents that should be on the district website. I know in Cohoes, we already had 1 parent meeting last week before we posted it to get feedback into the plan. So we will have 2 additional meetings in Cohoes before August 21st. That will be virtual meetings that you can log into, but the governor did say every district needs to do that by 2 weeks from now, to have 3 meetings to get parent input and respond to your questions.
Hi everyone, this is Helen. A couple, one other question that I saw kind of go up in the chat was if you could share any plans for things like recess, snack, and gym classes.
Who would you let start?
We'll go to Jessica.
Okay. So for snack time and lunches. So snack time in our district, the students typically bring in their own snacks. I know teachers will always keep snacks on the side in case, a student forgets it for the day or whatnot. We are looking at grab and go type meals for both snacks and lunches. So something that can be easily accessible, that doesn't have to have, communal, like buffet style things. So we're trying to really talk about the nutrition and what we can use that's more of a grab and go kind of lunch for kids. In regard to recess time, we are allowing cohorts to be out on the playgrounds at specific times, and they will looking at being cleaned in between, but definitely trying to keep those cohorts together and not mix the cohorts when they're out and about playing. We're having continued conversations on how do we teach the kids to be socially distant when they're running around the playground. So those are all things that we are working into our plans, our teaching plans with the kiddos the first few weeks of school, along with hand washing and mask wearing and those types of things. So those are all things as a district we're talking about our first few weeks of school, having common language on and teaching.
Thank you. This is another question that hasn't been put out there. How are both of your districts planning on doing gym class? So I'll put it to you, Erin, first.
We, at the secondary level, students are following their schedules. So they're still going to be able to go to the gym for gym class, but the gym teachers just need to be focused on things like wellness activities, non-contact sports, minimizing there being tools or equipment that you would pass back and forth between students. So maybe a lot of cross-country running in the fall, perhaps, or yoga, I think that they'll be doing. In our elementary schools, we're starting very, very self-contained in the pods, and they will be eating lunch in their classroom. Lunch is going to be delivered to the classrooms, and they will eat right there. And also PE, on nice days, they can go outside for PE and do activities that do not involve being that close to each other. And then as on not nice days, they can be doing yoga, go noodle, those kinds of things, but nothing that's going to make them breathe too deeply, because then they have to be 12 feet apart instead of 6 feet apart.
Jessica? Can't hear you.
So pretty much the same. When we can be outside, we're going to be outside. We're looking at, no contact. Now, can you guys hear me? There's feedback. Okay. So it'll be scheduled within their day. In PE, if there's any kind of vigorous activity, the Department of Health is.
Go ahead.
Okay, so we were just saying that in PE, they have to stay 12 feet apart if there's any vigorous activity. So being outside would be best. And right now I know our PE department is in discussion of the different kinds of materials and activities they'll be using.
So we also have a question kind of similarly on keeping the masks clean. The question says how to keep masks clean after break or lunch, and will schools be able to provide a set of masks for students to use? I would imagine that probably also applies to like the gym setting we were just talking about. If a student is, is doing something that they're breathing heavily or it's coming on and off the face a lot. Do either of you have ideas on school capacity to provide multiple masks and how to keep them clean?
Decide who you want to answer the question.
Well, okay, wait, I unmuted.
Okay, go ahead, Erin.
Okay, so we encourage our students to bring their own masks and have cloth masks that they can wash at home, but we also have disposable masks that are child size that they that we will be able to give to students in a situation where if they spilled their lunch on it or if they got all sweaty and heavy breathing in gym, then we would be able to provide a disposable mask for them. I think that's part of our parent communication too, needs to be about, you're supposed to wash it every day. And that's going to be a hard thing for some people too, people that don't have laundry, and I don't know how that will go.
And we are similar. We will have child-sized masks as well as adult masks. We are also keeping a set of masks on our buses in case a student goes to get on the bus and they do not have a mask. We'll have one for them there. So we will always have them available for the students. But again, we are also encouraging them to bring in any of their masks made from home. And we are also incorporating, how to keep them clean and suggesting multiple masks instead of just one for a full week.
I see some other questions, Kristen, but I do want to be respectful of everybody's time. It's 2:04. Some of these other questions, we can also help them in other ways by talking to them.
Yes. I believe we're scheduled to 2:30. Is that?
We are? That is my mistake. My bad. I'm so engrossed in the conversation, but I want to be respectful of everybody's time. So forgive me.
Let's see. So there is a question here, specifically talking about a student with attention issues in an IEP that provides for attention prompts. So things like check-ins, refocus, redirection prompts. Those are accommodations that can normally be provided for kind of quietly when in the classroom, but will be more difficult when the teacher is trying to maintain social distancing. Can you both touch on how your teachers can address those types of IEP accommodations without singling out those students to their peers? Erin, if you want to go first.
You got me, Kristen. I envision when the desks are spaced out 6 feet apart, I envision the teachers circulating around the classroom and not standing up in just one space at the front of the class. So I would think that that kind of just sort of moving into the direction of the student and maybe doing a little tap on the desk as you're walking past would be a way to not draw attention to the student, but still remind them to stay on task.
So it's the same, all of the teachers and staff, adults, have to be wearing the masks at all time. So they can break that social distancing 6-foot rule as long as both are wearing masks. So it's really dependent on the student, and hopefully they're moving away from more of the physical prompting anyway with the student. So we would start talking about that. Is it more, do they just need to walk by them? Is it an eye contact kind of thing? So we would discuss with that student and those teachers what would work best for that student, so there didn't have to be physical contact, but definitely if there needed to be, we would have the PPE available to allow that staff member to be able to do that.
Okay, thank you. We had another, it's kind of, it's like half comment, half question. So there are concerns with districts and doing live streaming for remote learning, whether that's in a hybrid setting or a full-time remote setting. What are the plans for hybrid models, and do you have ways of addressing confidentiality issues with live streaming? Jessica, we'll have you start with that one.
Sure. So in our hybrid model, parents are going to start hearing a lot about synchronous and asynchronous learning. So we're talking about being creative in, do they have pre-recorded lessons, or are they using a Google Classroom format for students to be doing more independent and practice work on those times when they are not face-to-face? Or are they scheduling specific times where a student would be virtual but part of a center within a classroom? So the teacher would be at that center with that group as they rotate around. So those are all things that we're really starting to kind of figure out in regard to confidentiality. I would worry about that more in the self-contained classes. I wouldn't do a live streaming from a special education self-contained classroom or a related service. If we do have, when we do have the virtual learning and we have the Google Classroom platforms, we have the special education teacher associated with that Google Classroom, but they have a separate attachment on that page that just those identified students can access and be part of. We're also having those special education teachers do office hours and different resource times. So really, we're not looking at doing live streaming. If there's anything live within the classroom, it would be in a small group, general ed classroom, not a self-contained.
I would say the same is true for us. Our special education students have been having Google Meets, for example, in their resource room. When we were all virtual, they would go to, the teacher would meet with the students in the resource room, and that is contractually protected privacy between Google and the school district, or actually Google and the BOCES. But as far as there being mixed bags of students, I don't think that we have any confidentiality issues with the Google meetings. And that's really our hybrid model, like Jessica's, is more the synchronous on one day and the asynchronous on the next day. So you're all in person. It's not that the live class is being streamed to someone who's at home doing virtual.
Hi everyone, so this is Helen popping in here. I got a great email from one of our attendees who is on call-in, and they were asking how to ask questions if you were just calling in from the phone. If you are one of those people, please send me an email. It's in the email that I sent for you to get the link to this training. And with that, one question we have from a call-in listener is, for related services like counseling, do we have to do groups with students from the exact same classroom? And what about sharing of materials like cooperative games? And Erin, if you want to go first, and then we can go to Jessica.
Sure. I would think that Hopefully our counselors have a big bag of tricks and that they could come up with some cooperative things that they could do with students in a cooperative game kind of way that were more, talking aloud, drawing on the whiteboard with separate markers and not featuring shared materials. And Helen, I'm sorry, would you say the first part again?
Yes. 2 seconds. Background noise. Thank you. The first part of the question was, do we now have to from the exact same classroom?
In my school, in the elementary, you do. It would be in the same grade at the middle school because they're all contained within their grade pod. At the high school, they are more flexible with their schedule right now, but elementary are all staying in their little pods. So they would have to be. The alternative would be if someone was located at a different spot, using a computer to, do a Google Meet type telegroup with others in the group.
And ours is the same. We're trying to keep our cohorts together. And I know scheduling can be really tough for those different types of groupings. So we would be looking at cohorts at grade levels to do that. And if we have to adjust the size of a group or move things to an individual, we're also looking at being able to provide those things depending on the staffing that we have. And if need be, some of them would be virtual as well as face-to-face.
So I just want everyone to understand, I know I can tell from Jessica's voice and her expression when she says it, and I know I feel the same way. We would really prefer to be able to choose groups from any class where the students would make the most sense together. And this is something that, I think it's fair to say that we're starting out as restrictive as possible because we don't know how this is going to work. And our goal will always be to make sure things are safe and then see if we can stretch a little and see if we can stretch a little more and, and do more things and be more flexible for our students. But from being not being able to be together at all, we just want to be able to stay together initially. And then after we've got that down and make sure that everyone is following the hygiene and the practices that they need to, and our kids with fevers and our teachers with fevers are really staying home, then hopefully we will be able to loosen these strings. I don't see that what we're doing now is going to be necessarily what we're doing in November or March or May, but we figure it's better to start tight and then loosen up, because when you start out here, it's so hard to rein it in if you need to. And we just want to make sure everyone is healthy.
And I would just like to add as well that, all of us working in the school districts, our heart goes out to parents and trying to decide, what I'm a parent as well, with a student who is in a high risk, with a child in a high risk category. So we understand, and we're trying our best to try to help you in understanding where we're at and why we're doing what we're doing, because it's a really tough decision and conversation for everybody. So I think the main takeaway from any of this is, if you really have specific questions to your child in your district, please do not hesitate to reach out and have that conversation with us, because things are changing, at a rapid rate. Things are changing and evolving. And one thing I say today might be changing tomorrow. So feel free, definitely. I would rather I have parents call me and ask me those questions than worry about them. We have enough stress and anxiety right now. So please, if that's the biggest takeaway from today, is to be in communication with us as much as possible.
So at this point, I think we have one remaining question in the chat box. It says, how are we going to work with our students who struggle with executive functioning concerns, like time management. Can either of you speak on how, like, regardless of the platform used to return to school, whether it's in person, all virtual, a hybrid model, how those IEP accommodations and goals can still be worked on for children with executive functioning needs? Erin, if you want to go first.
Thank you. I have 2 of those children and a husband that all live in my house, so I could totally talk about this. I would say that first and foremost, we need to check in with these kiddos. We need to, frequently check in, and then as they grow, as they learn how to use their Google Calendar, as they learn how to use their, put their assignments in and check things off their list. It's actually one of the nice things I think about being virtual or partially virtual is that you have those electronic tools that they can use, and you teach that to them when they're in school, and then they can continue to use it when they're at home. They can set little alarms for themselves to let them know when something has to be done. I feel like in class, the teachers will be focusing on those things. The special education teacher clearly will focus on that goal. And then as well with the counseling person. And then as long as we're able to work with the parents before the closure, in the event of a closure, then parents will have those same tools at home and be able to continue to reinforce in person what the teacher is reinforcing over the computer.
And I agree 100% with that. I think we have a lot of built-in pieces in technology that help. In our district, we have, all of the Google platforms. So we teach kiddos how to use Google Keep, how to set things on their calendars and alarms and reminders. So especially if that's a goal on an IEP, that will be followed by the student's special education teacher, and they will work through that with them. I also want to clarify too that at least in our district's hybrid setting, when the students are face-to-face, they're getting that instruction. When they're hybrid at home, it's going to be more of an independent practice time. That in our district, my specific district, we're not looking at live streaming and then them sitting on the computer all day. We know we're all kind of, tapped out when it comes to a computer screen. So we are looking at what are those more creative, hands-on things and independent things that the students can be doing during that time when they're home. But that could be different in other districts.
On that topic, we had a comment from I'm presuming a parent who said after a few attempts in March, we gave up and refused. So there was no work done from March moving forward. And the feeling that parents need a training, something like, this is what your child's typical day of virtual school should look like. So I think parents are looking for some guidance on if they are in a situation, again, where their students are trying to learn virtually, what are some tools that parents can use to keep their kids on track?
Meg, I can't see you, but that's a great piece of feedback. Thank you. That was Meg, right? I can't tell if it's the one on top or the one underneath. Oh, it was Jan. Sorry. I think that's great feedback for us. And I know that we have talked a bunch in my district about how can we do this? What will it look like? And we've been talking about making videos. Our tech people are making videos for parents as far as how to log in and stuff. But I think from your child's own teacher, here's what I would like your virtual day to look like is a great plan. So thank you very much. I'm going to write that down. And I'll even credit you.
So in our school district, we created pivot plans. So every teacher has a plan that in case we have to move virtual, they have a schedule of what their day would look like, the requirements each day, how the grading would take place. So parents will have that at the beginning of the school year, even if we're face-to-face. So they'll know what to expect in the event that we have to pivot to a virtual platform very, very quickly. for our parents that are choosing to register their students in our virtual school, we are creating a handbook, and there's going to be a set schedule and a calendar of times that the students need to log on and the different activities that they would be doing. So for instance, from 9 to 10 and 8 to 9 in the morning might be morning meeting, different things. Then they might have to be on for a math lesson. Then they might get an hour break to do some independent work. Then they would have lunch break. Then they would have to log back on. So we're trying to keep things as consistent day to day for parents as much as possible. So students we're hoping will have a nice set schedule if they're home virtual. That's one thing that we learned was consistency for parents when we first closed back in March was the top priority.
And I see another question that came in about split classrooms. So are your classrooms being split into 2 classrooms with the same teacher, a teacher in one room and projecting into another room, or staffing by additional teachers? Jessica, do you want to pick up on that one?
Sure. So the way we're working is we will have our classes broken down into an A group and a B group. So in our hybrid model, the A group might come on Monday and Tuesday, the B group might come Thursday, Friday. We're looking at whether or not we are going to have a cleaning day in between there. Those are things that we're still working out. So we won't have full classes in unless we can socially distance them within the same room with the same teacher. So we will remain in a hybrid model if the numbers remain high so that we can have an A group and a B group. If for some reason a certain class has a bunch of virtual school students registered and that cohort reduces and we can bring all of them back every day and not break them into 2 groups, we would be looking at doing that as well. But we will not have everybody in school and have them just monitored in another room by a teacher or live streaming. We just don't feel that's a conducive way to teach them.
Erin, do you have anything to add, or are you guys planning to do?
Oh, we will pretty much be the same. We have our teachers, the one teacher is in every day, and they have half of the kids every other day. They have each half every other day.
Okay, I'm just taking a scan through the chat box for other questions. Tina or Helen or Sherry, are you seeing anything that I've missed so far?
Not really, no. There was a lot of discussion. I think most of it's been covered from what I can see.
Yeah, I mean, I do see some other things, but I think they're more of personal types of questions because there's something about Medicaid stuff. I think some other questions could be on a personal side.
Great. Well, Kristen, if it's okay with you, I think that's a perfect place to stop. This has been a very fruitful training. I am going to send everyone handouts from each of the presenters today. I'm also going to include a link to our evaluation for this training. Please fill it out. It helps us immensely. It makes it so that we're able to continue putting on these trainings for you guys. And if you have any questions, you have my email address and I can hopefully connect you with whoever you need. So thank you guys so much. And thank you to our presenters as well.